Subject this morning, divine love, true friendship, or the one true love. This subject is very dear to the hearts of us all. Also, it is a very difficult subject to speak about, because you know that true love cannot be put into words. It's very hard to discuss. Divine love is a celestial experience. As the Master says, very difficult to put into words. But this one divine love, which is underneath all true friendship, is none other than the pull of God, the pull of His great attractive force, which is drawing all things back home to Him. And that is the greatest force in the universe, far greater than the force of creation, because all things resolve back finally into God. And so this friendship, we must realize, is of God. True friendship is of God. True friendship is none other than Spirit's attempt to return from duality and multiplicity, relativity, back into the unity of the one. God has become many, and He is sitting in the hearts of each one of us, and He is trying to return home to Himself, so to speak. And that's why every true friendship is of God, and every true friendship has the bond of divine love, unconditional love. And so friendship is one of the greatest aspects of God, one of the greatest phases of God's omnipresence and omniscience. Everything is in God. Whatever aspect you want to approach Him as, Heavenly Father, Mother, Friend, Beloved, is there. He is the one. And because He is the one and is trying to return home to that oneness, having made so many things and so much creation that He might express Himself through so many ways, now He wants to go back home Himself to Himself. And friendship is the way. Friendship is perhaps the greatest, quickest path back home to God. Because when you have the friendship or the relationship of guru-disciple, it is the greatest friendship. And that's the spiritual law of returning back home to God. This pull of God is, of course, change. It is metamorphosed into many forms. Human love. Family love is none other than divine love, but it's a little different because there are conditions and restrictions. Sometimes in these various forms of love, there is attachment and possession, and that dilutes divine love. Divine love is none other than God's unconditional love, His unconditional pull of everybody, irrespective of color, class, or creed, back home to Him. There are no conditions to God's love. There are conditions sometimes to human love and friendship. But true friendship has for its matrix or cementing bond the divine love of God's presence. Perhaps the greatest example is the guru-disciple relationship. True friendship is based, as I have said, on broadness, unconditional love. And that's how God is. That's just how He is. That's why every one of us is near and dear to God. Do not think you're an outcast. You are not. There is only one love, and that's God's love. How else could it be but unconditional? Because He has naturally His own interest at heart. He wants to draw all things back into Himself. That's the law He has made. The law of creation sends His great force out to create all things. But the law of His love pulls all things back to Him. And so that pull which you feel at different times, some more than others, is none other than God's great pull to draw you back, to draw each one of us back without restrictions, without conditions, back home to Him. So true friendship is based on the presence of God in a dynamic way, a knowable way in the two friends, or many friends. That's the way back home to God. That's the spiritual law. That's why you feel friendship for one another according to the presence of God felt in the friend, whether it is unconditional or nearly so, or of another nature, where there is possession, limitation, and restriction. God, there are no restrictions, no matter what we do, no matter how evil we are, if you can call it that, or how much steeped in sin, which we are not, we're just steeped in a little delusion. We feel separated from God, that's all. The minute you remove that separation, there's no sin. So, God He realizes that. He realizes that we're under His delusion, His creative, illusory force of Satan, none other than duality, none other than multiplicity, relativity, because in your meditation, if you go a little deep, where is it? It does not exist. But in place of that, we find the one love of the infinite Father without any ripple. That statement of Master, you know, when you're in the ripples of the mind, and sometimes ordinary family love and personal love is like the ocean. One day everything is fine, the next day everything is not fine. Like the boat rocking up and down on the sea. You're a human being, but you stand on the shore and you are a God because there you feel God's unconditional love. There is no restlessness there. Unconditional love, remember, whether it's between friends, husband and wife, or just acquaintances, it can develop into that friendship, unconditional love of God. So that's the key. That's the point we should remember in this subject, divine love or the true love. The true love is that there is one God, and He has split Himself up into many, and He is seated in the hearts of each one of us. He wants to go back home, but He has given us free will to go back home or stay out in this delusion. As gods, we elect to go back home to Him. As human beings, we will stay a while in this delusion until we have enough of it, and we return home to God. Now, true friendship with this divine love supersedes family love and such limited forms of love, because these loves are conditioned. They're conditioned, as I have said, by selfishness, by possession, and by other faculties and conditions of this outward existence, like friendship on a business plane or on an artistic plane or some such plane as that. It's limited, is it not? Because these other things enter into it. But true friendship is unlimited, unconditioned. I remember Master wrote me a letter one time, long time ago, from I believe it was Portland, Oregon, when we first left Boston and went across the country and went up to Alaska and then came down and established this which you have now. And I think that's the greatest expression of true friendship, and it will point out to you as I read just what we must avoid and what we must foster if we are to enjoy true friendship with one another and, of course, with God. In this letter he said, this was written 1925, quite some time ago. This is what he said: I have found the law of love and reciprocal goodness are the strongest ties, the greatest impelling forces that make us responsible to one another. Not what you can give the other one, not what you can get out of another person, but, as he says, the greatest impelling forces The law of love and reciprocal goodness. Why? Because God is seated in the hearts of each friend. In the heart of each friend. That's why the Master goes on. The material binding is futile. The material binding is futile and meaningless, especially where there is a spiritual tie. The material binding between you and your friend will pass away. It's got to. But that spiritual bond of divine love is eternal, because that's God himself. So in your friendship, be sure, if you want it to last, that it has those qualifications. I think that's one of the greatest letters I have received from the Master, because it just lays plainly before you. True friendship is on the spiritual plane. There can be great friendship on the material plane, but if it is backed up by the divine consciousness, unconditional love of God, seated in the hearts of each friend, then it is really true friendship, because it is eternal. The Guru-disciple relationship is the greatest, because it is built wholly on the desire, the mutual desire, to help one another, and by that union to create a great flame of spirit flowing from that friendship, which others can follow back home to our one abode of light. Going on a little bit, it is not possible or necessary to love all personally. That's one mistake I think we make when we consider the divine love of God unconditionally. Well, it's impossible to do that, but it does mean that we can realize this, and it can be realized only when you feel the presence of God in all, that God is seated in the hearts of all. And as such, you are always ready to help them when they need your help, when they need to be cheered up. When things are going wrong, they need a little solace. And sometimes when they're going wrongly on the material plane and they need material aid, it should be given according to your ability. That's what it means. True divine love does not mean that you can be personally associated with everybody to the fullest extent, because you would do nothing else. But you can always feel God in whomever you meet. It makes no difference where it is. You can feel him, and you can lend that solace which you feel from the presence of God in you. That will help that other friend until finally he too, or that acquaintance or whom you meet, he too will gradually feel the presence of God through your goodness and through the fact that you have allowed God's love to flow through you. We do nothing about it. God is the doer. When he gets a channel, he uses it. That's spiritual law. That's the law which we have to realize. So feel God in the hearts of all. How can you do it? Through yoga. It's very difficult. People say, well, it takes lots of people that have enemies. I guess every other person's their enemy. I wouldn't want that condition, but I think that's the way it is by what's going on all around. Well, it's pretty hard for you to say, now, listen, you just feel God in the hearts of all, you'll be all right. It's impossible for him to do that. But if they practice yoga, which means union with God, if they really practice self-realization yoga and attain the presence of God, then his love flows through them. Then they can feel God in the hearts of all. Feeling that, then they can do these things of which we have been speaking. Because God is in all, there's no question of it. They must, and we must all feel and know that one eternal presence of God which is in and through all things, and that's divine love. Divine love is what? Divine love is the burning power of the consciousness of God's presence, his omniscience, his all-pervading consciousness. Can you separate the burning power from the fire? We have a fire here. Can you separate the burning power from that fire? So divine love, the burning power of the fire of God's consciousness and His omnipresence. It's the power of God's consciousness. There's only one consciousness, and that's God Himself. And so if we feel God in all, by understanding and realizing the burning power of God's consciousness within you, then you can give it to others, and you can be a friend to man, whomever you meet. And you do not have to feel that you must take on all individuals in that definite way. It's impossible. But this way you do a better job for them, because you stimulate within them, because God is flowing through you. You stimulate within them the ability to help themselves feel the presence of God in themselves. I have a reference here from Master's work, one of his writings. The Master said, someone was complaining to the Master why the Lord gives us families if He doesn't want us to love them more than we love other people. Well, that's a good question. The family tie is very strong. But the thing is, if you feel the presence of God in your family, you'll be able to love them better, and there'll be no restrictions, no limitations. And the love will be greater, and it will develop and change into divine love. You're not going to lose anything. You're not going to lose that daughter or son which you love so much, or that husband or wife. You will not lose them. You will gain them more, because you will feel God in them. So he goes on and says, by placing us in families, God affords us an opportunity to overcome selfishness and to find it easy to think of others. It's very difficult to think of others when you have a son you're attached to, or a daughter. It's very difficult. Break the attachment, and you will think of others and more of your son or daughter. So finally, Master says, in friendships, he offers us a way to broaden further our sympathies. Even that is not the end, and the end is God alone. God alone. We must love God for Himself alone, not for what He can give us. Although we do utilize that aspect of love, we must love God alone. God alone for Himself alone. So, Master says, we should continue to expand our love until it becomes divine, encompassing all beings everywhere. Otherwise, how may we achieve oneness with God, the Father of all? Thou shalt have no other gods besides me. You might say, thou shalt have no other friends but me, because I am in all friends. These are the lessons we must learn from this subject this morning. Now, a few rules given by our Master to preserve friendship. And these rules are simple, but if you obey them, you'll find that the relationship with friends is much better. The first and general rule is this, that when friendship is not based on the underlying divine love, then it is blind and leads to conditions and restrictions, and even when that friendship which your friend has is thwarted, then it may lead to blind hate. I have seen that many times. Why? Because it was not based on unconditional divine love. That's the first and greatest rule. If it's not based on that unconditional love, then you may run into trouble. And even sometimes those so-called friends will turn and blind hate will come. It is so without question of a doubt. Now, the other rules the Master gives are these. Do not be sarcastic to a friend. Familiarity breeds contempt, and sometimes when the friend becomes quite close to you, you may be sarcastic. But if you feel God in that friend, you will not be. So that's the first rule the Master gives. Do not be sarcastic to friends. Do not flatter them, unless it is to encourage them. Do not placate the friends, unless perhaps it is to encourage them. It is very dangerous. The third one is, do not agree when they're wrong. That's a hard one. Do not agree when they're wrong. Say, no, sir. That is not right. I tell you because, or I feel that because I love you so much. Do not flatter them that way. Do not agree when they are wrong. Do not be indifferent to the indulgences and harmful pleasures. That is, do not overlook them. That's a sin. Do not be so that you cannot point out the things you know are wrong. They will be all right, but if you allow it to go on, then it becomes more difficult for them. So do not do those things of which the Master speaks. This one here now is really, we must remember it. If advice is asked, give it gently with love. The best way is make them ask, Master told me, make them ask you twice before you give them the advice. Because no one likes to be corrected. Even from a friend, it hurts a little bit sometimes. People say to me, now I want you to discipline me. Yes, I will. I want you to do anything you say. Yes, I'll do it. And then when I tell them, they get mad sometimes. So I remember Master's sayings, and I try to, when I'm sure that they want me to help them, just because perhaps I've had a little more experience, I don't know why, but I do know, above all, I want to preserve that relationship in God between each one who comes to me, because that's of God, and I'm not going to blindly dive into that situation. But when I'm sure, because it's difficult to discipline others, we know we all need it ourselves. But to help them, under certain conditions, we can do it. Fools argue, friends discuss. Sometimes I hear it going on in good shape. It's not discussion, it's arguing. So these are the rules the Master gives us. Now, true friendship consists in being mutually useful. Mutually useful. That's an important point. Sometimes this goes to the extremes of being mutually useful, because especially in political aspects, I think here in America we see that America is mutually useful a good many times. And so that goes on politically. There was a story that I read. I'd like to give it to you at this time. I hope you will realize that it is in good faith, but it is the funniest story I've heard for quite some time. And it has to do with just this point of being mutually useful, of service. That's true friendship, of serving one another. And so it says here, a tribe in Africa was having a terrible time with its food supply because of bad crops, and the natives went to the chief, who said, what we'll do is send a telegram to the Russians telling them of our predicament and our situation, that we are having agricultural problems and need their assistance. Then they, because they are mutually of service to those people, certain people under certain conditions, they will send us seeds and tractors and 100 young technicians to help us. Then, he says, we will send a telegram to the United States. You know, they're easily touched, so to speak, and they will respond. So he says, we will send a telegram to the United States telling them that the Russians, you see what a wonderful friendship it is, pitting one friend against the other. So it says, and the Russians, we'll tell them that the Russians are sending us seeds and tractors and technicians, and the Americans will send us seeds and tractors and 100 technicians. Then, said the chief, when all the technicians arrive, we'll eat them. Now that's what I call mutual service. I couldn't resist telling you that. Because you know, Sikh Chesterton said. He said that religion and love of God is not a funeral ceremony. How true that is. And so although God is mutually, or rather He's our greatest friend, when we need things we go to Him, there was, and sometimes we abuse it, there was this gentleman, he was a very good man. He believed in prayer very much. He took to God all his troubles and the things he needed. And so he prayed to God. He needed an automobile and he wanted a Ford. He prayed, I want this Ford. And he was specific because he knew God was exact. He told him all he wanted, the equipment, trim, and the radio, and all that goes with it. So he prayed to him. And, you know, he received that Ford. Received that Ford just as he had asked for. And with great reverence, he prayed to God and he thanked Him. Thanked Him for sending him just what he wanted. The Lord said, that's all right, son. He said, that's all right. I'm so happy that you enjoy it. But you know, he said, I had a Cadillac picked out for you. But you were hell-bent on a Ford. Now you'll remember that story. On mutual service. You should have prayed, Lord, you know everything. Give me what you want. See what you've got. So let us remember that. Now we come to the Guru-disciple friendship. This is the greatest thing, the Guru-disciple friendship. Because this is the direct route to God, to divine love, to God's unconditional love. This is spiritual law. And those friends under the Guru-disciple relationship, which I know a great many of you here have that relationship. You have that relationship because you want spiritual love, unconditional spiritual love, and with that you get divine love. And having that relationship, as I spoke a little earlier, you stir up a great flame of spirit because of the mutual love which you have in yourself and with your Guru. And by that great flame of divine love created by the Guru-disciple relationship, you help others. You set the example for others to follow back home to God. Master told me, he said, let your life be a spiritual example for others to follow, to our one abode of light, where all will meet who live and do right. Who set the example? He set it. He set the example, which I have tried to follow. That's the greatest friendship that can be, because it's spiritual law, and what happens? Both go to God. Both go to God. Let that be the bond in your spiritual friendship. The greatest is the Guru-disciple relationship. Because what is the duty, what is the spiritual law of the Guru-disciple relationship? The Guru introduces his friend to God. He introduces his friend to the friend of all friends, the one eternal Father. That's the greatest relationship. That's the most wonderful thing. In the autobiography, I read a little bit about such a friendship, which I'd like to read you at this time. The friendship between the Guru and disciple. And the Guru in this case, Sri Tesserji, the disciple was our beloved Master. You remember when when Master first met Sri Tesserji? Sri Tesserji asked him, or told him, I give you my unconditional love. Will you give me the same unconditional love? Master said, I will love you eternally, Guru Deva. Then it goes on, ordinary love is selfish. darkly rooted in desires and satisfaction. Divine love is without condition, without boundary, without change. The flux of the human heart is gone forever. That's the restlessness of ordinary love. The flux of the human heart is gone forever at the transfixing touch of pure love. He added humbly, this is the greatness of sheer testimony. Speaking to his disciples. Why could he speak to him that way? Because he saw in his disciple, he saw in Paramhansa Yogananda, he saw God. For this is what he said, if ever you find me falling from the state of God realization, please promise to put my head on your lap and help to bring me back to the cosmic beloved we both worship. That's divine love, unconditioned. I used to go to the Master with my head hanging down, ashamed of the many things I did. No show of anything. Come on in. That's divine unconditional love. That's what you must have for your friend. You must feel within your friend the presence of God and never betray a friend. That's the greatest sin. Worse than murder is the betrayal of a friend. The guru-disciple relationship, the greatest relationship to demonstrate the one true love, divine love. And so, my true friend was our Master. Those things are difficult to speak about. It is unnecessary to speak about them. He knows whom God lets know. You know when God lets you know. And so in true friendship, as the guru-disciple relationship, each knows. Just like when you feel the presence of God, you know. No one can take it away from you because divine love is there. And so just to express that, perhaps I'll read to you from one of Master's letters to me to show you and perhaps point out to you just true friendship in divine love. He wrote this from Phoenix in 1930. He said, what I feel about our friendship, I spontaneously write. God, I care not for riches, nor for fame or pomp, but give me true friends, even just one if it be, through whom I may behold thee, and whom I may trust and enjoy without, as thy image ever reflected in the mirror of my love. A friend is he who feels my various needs as his own, who feels for me as he would feel for himself. Ah, wavelets of true friendship, heaven-born, merge as thy one ocean of vast love. In the sea of friendship, the meandering, lost, prodigal souls come back to their own one home. Could there be a greater friend than that? That's an example of divine friendship.